Good afternoon, everyone. It's indeed a very beautiful time in which we can talk about the power of myth. Devdutt Pattanaik is a delight to listen to, and I'm sure you're in for a treat. But let me just say a few words about Devdutt before he begins his talk. He was designated the Chief Belief Officer of the Futures Group. This was in 2008, and it was very clear that he wanted people to be a bit puzzled about that designation because what is a Chief Beliefs Officer? And then as time went by and we heard Devdutt, we looked at his books. He has 30 books to his credit, and over a period of time he has written 400 articles. We began to understand how important is mythology in our everyday life. And Devdutt has perhaps single-handedly shown to all of us that mythology is not something that exists in the past, but it is something that we live with in the present, and that also directs our future. So Devdutt, thank you very much for bringing that sense of a living mythology to all of us who live here. Second, Devdutt also calls himself a mythologist, and everybody calls him that too. So who is a mythologist? It seemed to me that Devdutt has professionalized the idea of studying myths, and he has been bold, courageous enough to define something as amorphous as the word mythology. And he has said that mythology is storytelling, mythology is symbols, mythology is rituals. And when we put it all together and we study it with a sense of understanding and valuation, then we become a people who understand or at least explore what is the power of this mythology. Now, as I said, he has a large number of books and publications, but there's one recent book that I read and have been absolutely captivated about. This book is called Shikhandi and Other Tales That They Don't Tell You. It's an amazing exploration into cross-gender, bisexuality, other aspects of gender identity, alternative sexuality, and he's pulled out these beautiful stories from the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, the oral traditions, and many more sources in India. Each one of them is a little vignette. For instance, one hears the story about Shikhandi and realizes the dilemma that sexual change can bring about. He has also talked about the story of Arjun for the period of time that he became a dance teacher and was called Brihannala. And what Devdutt has done so brilliantly is that he tells the story and then it gives a contemporary twist. So at the end of the Brihannala story, he said, if you were going to think about the situation now, what kind of questions would arise in your mind? Was Arjun thinking like a woman? Was he being a woman? Was he acting as a woman? Or what were his internal dilemmas like? Those are the ways in which Devdutt takes the ideas forward. A book that I'm carrying with me, this is called Business Sutra. Business Sutra, a very Indian approach to management. Now, I'm certainly very far away from the world of management, being a literature teacher. So I looked over it, and then something caught my eye, and it said that in management, you always have to be an innovator. And then I said, okay, what's the story about the innovator? And the story happened to be that of Krishna. And it said he was almost a natural-born innovator, because when he's a little child and that pot of butter is hanging up there, he has to innovate a way in which he can get that into his lab. So he's an innovator. And then throughout his life, it explains in Devdutt's inimitable way how Krishna is an innovator and how we can use the principles of innovation from that story to lead into our own lives. So that's just a little brief introduction to a wonderful contemporary writer, Devdutt Pattanaik. Over to you. We look forward to listening to you, Devdutt, on the power of myth.
Good morning. I'll begin by defining myth. Myth is subjective truth, your truth and my truth. How do I transmit my truth to you, and how do you transmit your truth to me? You transmit it using stories, symbols, and rituals. Our parents transmit their truth to us through stories, symbols, and rituals. We will transmit our truth to our children through stories, symbols, and rituals. The body of stories, symbols, and rituals that transmits the subjective truth of a people from generation to generation is called mythology. Mythology is also the subject that studies stories, symbols, and rituals in order to understand the subjective truth of a people. The problem is the word subjective. Where do you locate subjectivity? Is subjectivity fact or fiction? Is your truth fact or fiction? You see, the problem with subjectivity is because we are spellbound by the idea of objectivity, the truth. What is the truth? Who decides what is the truth? Do I decide what is the truth? Do you decide what is the truth? Or someone else out there will decide what is the truth? The priest decided the truth. The scientist continues to decide the truth. The historian decides the truth. The politician decides the truth. The economist decides the truth. The journalist decides the truth. What about my truth? Does it matter? Does the truth of a people matter on their terms? Objectivity is an idea that prevents us from appreciating other people's truth, because we just assume there is the truth out there and somebody else will tell me what that is. But there are different kinds of truth in this world. There is objective truth, there is subjective truth. Objective truth is singular. Subjective truth is plural. There is measured truth, truth that you can measure, and there is truth that you cannot measure. There is truth which is limited, and there is truth which is limitless. Where do you box mythology? My publishers keep asking me, where should we locate your book? In the fiction section or in the non-fiction section? And they are not able to answer the question. Why? To use the famous activist phrase, it's the hegemony of objectivity. We are obsessed with the truth. And I'm told the scientist will tell us what the truth is. But I'm a medical student. I am a scientist. And I know that science is restricted to measurement. And a good scientist is not interested in truth. A good scientist is interested in fact. And fact is that which can be measured. What you can't measure, you leave it. You don't bother with it. You restrict yourself to the world of measurement. And with humility, say that I don't understand what I can't measure. That is science. Scientific truth is only measurable truth. I can measure that I live one life. So you ask a scientist, is rebirth truth? And the scientist will say, I don't know. I can't measure. He will never say it is not true. All he will say is, I cannot measure. The moment somebody starts using the word truth, it is someone's subjective reality. Because as we all know, my truth is always the truth. In some parts of the world, they believe you live only once. And remember, it's a belief. And this belief shapes the way they think. It aligns very well with scientific thought, because scientists say, you can only measure this life, you can't measure anything more. That's it. So it is a strange alignment. You live only once. So when you read Greek mythology, you must remember it is a world where there is only one life, followed by an afterlife, an eternal afterlife. When you read Abrahamic mythology, remember it's only one life. When you ask a scientist, how should I live my life? He will not be able to answer. Because a scientist cannot answer the question, why do you exist? He can tell you how you came into being, how you were conceived. Science cannot answer the question, why do you exist? For that, you have to go to the realm of mythology. So some people decided that you have to live this one life meaningfully. Because they believe there is only one life and you have to live it meaningfully. But there are two schools of thought. What is a meaningful life? In Abrahamic mythology, the idea is a meaningful life is a life that you live with goodness, with righteousness. You have to live the right way. Who decides the right way? God decides the right way. And God will tell you how to live your life. And you have to follow that. Another group of people said, no, that is not true. Who is this God? I can't see this God. I will decide what is meaningful. I will decide what is meaningful for me. And that is Greek thought, obsessed with individualism. My life, my work. So when you read Greek mythology, it's about heroes who are on a great journey trying to achieve something because achievement matters. And achievement matters because when you achieve, you will earn a place in the heaven of heroes, which is Elysium. And the gods may support you, or the gods may block you. They are good and bad. They fight with you, but the whole point is to struggle and to achieve. And if you achieve, you become the great hero. You may be even invited to drink with the gods on Mount Olympus. That's the heroic narrative. It is not a global narrative. We assume the heroic narrative is a global narrative. That is how books are written, the hero myth, the mono myth. But that's Greek. That's not global. The Abrahamic mythology doesn't talk about heroes. It talks about a very different structure. Yes, there is one life, but you don't live it on an individual term. You follow the collective. You do what the group tells you to do. It speaks of a promised land. It speaks of a chosen people. It speaks of the ummah. It speaks of the brotherhood. It speaks of the church. Compliance is good over here. It is all about rule following, rule following, rule following. Greeks are all about break the rules, break the rules, break the rules. And the Abrahamic mythologies are follow the rules, follow the rules, follow the rules. What is better? Which is better? You ask the activist and he will say breaking the rules is better. The world is made of oppressors and oppressed. It's all about mutiny. It's all about resistance. It is all about subversion. That is Greek thought. That's Greek mythology. You ask the nationalist and he will say it is all about patriotism. It is all about compliance. Submit to the will of the people. People are the new God. That is Abrahamic mythology at work. And Abrahamic mythology and Greek mythology marry to create what we call Western thought. But the global village is not just the West. There is the East, there's the North, there's the South. It's time to look in other places. So let's go to China. And before that, let me take a drink. Now, Greek mythology speaks of individualism. Abrahamic mythology speaks of collectivism. It's one framework, just one framework. Nobody talks about nature. For the Greeks, nature is pandemonium, the land of satires, the land of people. Nature is chaos, it's trouble. It has to be controlled. It is Bellerophon, the chimera. Bellerophon will come and destroy the chimera and bring order. That is the hero's job. But China, nature plays a very important role. And China too has two schools of thought. There's the Taoist thought and there's the Confucian thought. Taoist thought is more in the rural areas. Confucian thought is more in the urban areas. Taoist thought looks at individualism, but in the context of nature. Confucianism looks at collectivism, but in the context of nature. Taoism said nature is order, culture is the problem. Confucian said the opposite. He says culture is order, nature is the problem. Two schools of thought vying for each other in the Chinese worldview. As far as the Taoist was concerned, the purpose of life is to just align with the natural forces, the yin and the yang. Don't be attractive to the predator and don't frighten the prey, and you will survive. Confucian thought didn't care about all this. It said not nature. Look at the Jade Emperor. The Jade Emperor in heaven has a bureaucracy, so on earth we need a bureaucracy. You have to mimic perfection which already exists in heaven, and perfection has 5 relationships. The king should rule over the people, the father over the children, the man over the woman, the elder over the younger, and friendship. 5 relationships, that's it. Nature is the problem. So here you have a very different way of looking at life, which is not the Greek way, which is not the Abrahamic way. It's the Chinese way. It's a very unique way. I keep telling people, it is one of the most pragmatic cultures in the world. It doesn't bother with Elysium or promised land. It is interested in here and now. Now, here and now. It's very pragmatic. It doesn't bother with the idea of God. They said, the king is there, don't think beyond the king. Focus on the king. Do what he tells you to do and all will be order. They are not interested in the truth. They are interested in order, harmony. It's a very different approach to life. If you try to understand China using a Western mythic framework, your diagnosis will always be wrong. And when your diagnosis is wrong, your prognosis is wrong, your prescription is wrong, and that's what is happening in the world today. Because we want to understand the truth on my terms, not on their terms. So we have traveled from the West to China, and we must come to India, to Jaipur. And of course, so what is Indian myth? So this is a wonderful story, and my favorite story, that Alexander came to India, and he met a gymnosophist, which in Greek means a naked wise man. So, being Alexander, he thought, you are naked, so you must be poor. In India, everybody knew that he was so rich that he didn't care for clothes. Because they're looking at it very differently. So the Alexander asked the gymnosophist, what are you doing? And the gymnosophist said, I'm experiencing nothingness. And the gymnosophist asked Alexander, what are you doing? Alexander said, I'm conquering the world. If he had met a biblical prophet, he would say, I'm saving the world. So I want to conquer the world, I want to save the world. And the gymnosophist would say, very good. Why do you bother? Because the gymnosophist lived in a very different worldview. For him, this is not the one and only life. This is one of many lives. You live in the canvas of infinity. If you don't understand the concept of infinity, you don't understand Indian thought. Ananta. And infinity, as any mathematician will tell you, is a concept. You can never measure infinity. A student of calculus will tell you, you can go reach closer and closer to infinity, but you'll never reach it. It is ever expanding. It never ends. It's always there. It's going on and on. And that is the fundamental principle of Indian thought. It is not one life, one way, one God, one way of looking, how the world should be, how everybody should behave. It is talking about a worldview which says nothing is permanent. Everything changes. Nothing is good and bad, but everything has a consequence. So what is good? What is bad? Is violence good or bad? And the wise man of India would just shake his head. He'll do the Indian head shake. This is also right. That is also right. Now look at this man from a Western perspective. They will say he's confused. He's a hypocrite. He doesn't understand. We must educate him. That is what is happening, because when you see from the outside, for Alexander, who wants to reach Elysium, this man is crazy. For Moses, who wants to reach the promised land, he'll say, will I reach the promised land? And what will the gymnosophist say? Maybe, maybe not. This is Shyadavada of Jainism. The perhaps thought, the perhaps school of thought. Because I don't know infinity, so how can I give you every permutation and combination? I don't know what obstacles you will face. I know what I know, but I don't know what I don't know. And it's a very different worldview. So if I look at Greek mythology and I talk about people who want to achieve, they want to break the rules, I think of Krishna. Leela Purushottam Krishna, the one who breaks the rules. How Greek. And like Greek heroes, he kills his maternal uncle. He must be Greek. Then I read about Maryada Purushottam Ram. Rule follower, rule follower, rule follower. And you said, oh, that sounds like biblical mythology. Wo bhi Indian hai. And suddenly you say, okay, Ram follows the rule, Krishna breaks the rule, which is better? And what is the Indian answer? Ye bhi theek hai, wo bhi theek hai. एक द्वापर युग के लिए, एक त्रेता युग के लिए. In different contexts, different rules. Now try to give this to the Supreme Court of India. He has to give you an answer, this or that. The Supreme Court judge can't do this. And that's the problem. Because हम समझते नहीं हैं. But without understanding, I want to judge. We are obsessed with judgment. I know what the truth is. Violence is good. Violence is bad. Capitalism is good. Capitalism is bad. Terrorism is good. Terrorism is bad. Indian answer? Pata nahi. Hoga. Who knows? How you present it? Because this looks very confusing, right? Indians can't make up their mind. They're wishy-washy. If I'm a judge, it all comes across as wishy-washy. Can't make up your mind. Slippery. But it is just saying that I don't have all the facts with me. I don't have all the data points. How do I know reality? And that's the concept. Because every Indian knows Ram is also good. Krishna is also good. Both of them are avatars of Vishnu. So Vishnu follows the rules in some context, breaks the rules in some context, like Indians. But the story gets even more complicated. Because as long as I'm talking about the gods, it's wonderful. So Ramayana, the story of the one who follows the rule, has a villain who breaks the rule. Ravan. My wife is my wife, your wife is also my wife. So I break the rule. And Mahabharata is about the rule breaking Krishna. And the villains there are following the rules. Duryodhana says, I didn't break any rule. As per the legal contract, I have a right to abuse this woman in public. And everybody says, yes, yes, yes. That makes sense because the law says so. So they're legally right. When a woman is being dragged and abused in public, they're legally right. Bhishma is right, Drona is right, Karna is right. Legally. Rules can be twisted very cleverly, and the ancients knew it. And so you have Ramayana with a rule-following hero and a rule-breaking villain. You have Mahabharata with a rule-breaking hero and a rule-following villain. Talk about confusion. Welcome to India. But then the question comes is, what is Dharma? And I always tell people, you cannot understand dharma unless you understand karma. And you cannot understand karma unless you understand the concept of rebirth. And rebirth is every action has a consequences. No action is good or bad. Every action has consequences. And it is explained in the form of a yajna. What you give is what you receive. Jaisa swaha vaisa tathastu. What you give is what you receive. So the question is asked is, for whom is Ram living his life? For whom is Ravan living his life? For whom is Krishna living his life? For whom is Duryodhan living his life? And when you start analyzing, you realize Ram doesn't benefit by defeating Ravan. वो तो दुखी आत्मा है. अयोध्या को सुख देने के लिए अपना सुख को तोड़ दिया. And Krishna also doesn't enjoy his life. He may defeat the Kauravas. At the end, what does he get? A curse, which will destroy his entire clan and his entire family. So both Ram and Krishna are tragic figures, but they're living for others. Pandavas are not interested in Hastinapur. They're interested in themselves. Ram is interested in Ayodhya. For whom do you live your life? That is dharma. Ravan is only bothered about himself. My brother may die, my son may die, my city will burn, but I will not let this woman go. What kind of a king is that? And what does Duryodhan say? For peace, I will not give 5 villages. I will not give a needle point of land. I don't mind if millions are killed. इसको अहंकार कहते हैं. So what is Indian thought? What is better? Is Sita better or Gita better? Sita is silent. She never speaks. Gita only talks and talks. Who is better? Who is the goddess? And the goddess will say, I am Sita, I am Gita. I am Radha, I am Rukmani. I am both. I am Ayodhya, I am Hastinapur. I will demand vengeance. I will also give forgiveness. मैं काली भी हूं, मैं गौरी भी हूं. These ideas don't make sense when you approach it using the concept of Greek mythology. If you're looking for Ram as a hero, you will fail. If you look at Ram as a prophet, you will fail. Ram is not the Chinese emperor. He is not the Taoist sage. See it in this context. Our problem is we are obsessed with the truth, the truth, the truth. And someone told us that if it is endorsed in Cambridge and Harvard, it must be the truth. But it is not. The world is very big. And the tribal community in Andamans does not care for your truth. They live in their truth. And we have to recognize this. We have become a world where we are so obsessed with the truth, we say there is only one God, and that is my truth. Everything else is false God. But Indian thought said, सब लोग देवी देवताएं हैं, सब में भगवान है, सबको नमन करो. So Wendy Doniger is also right, Dinanath Batra is also right. दोनों देवी देवताएं हैं. सबकी आवाहन करो, सबको भोग दो, सबका विसर्जन करो. Invite everyone, feed everyone, listen to them, Shruti, hear, see them, darshan karo. But in the end, bid them goodbye. Because nothing is permanent, not even their truth. We have become an intolerant society because we are obsessed with objectivity. We have valorized warfare, intellectual warfare. We call it argument. The word in Sanskrit for that is vivada. My truth is better than your truth. Your truth doesn't matter because you're uneducated, because you're poor. Your truth doesn't make sense because I am educated. I am literate. I am born in the high class or low class. I have this body, this gender. Vivad, continuously fighting. But Indian thought talks about samavad. Listen to the other. Uski baat bhi suno. His truth is also the truth. Your truth is also the truth. Listen. Because when you listen, your truth expands. When your truth expands, you are able to accommodate the other. This is pluralism. तुम्हारे पूजा घर में, in your God room, many gods can exist. तुम्हारा भंडार बड़ा है. You have enough to feed everybody. Why do you need to be so territorial? तुम पशु नहीं हो. But it's very difficult. Everybody wants a little proportion. You see, the word for God, the Vedic word was Brahmana. What does it mean? Mana means mind, Brah means expansion. Expand your mind. One whose mind is expanded to infinity is divinity. Or Bhagavan. In the Puranic period, the word comes Bhagavan. All of us have access to limited truth. Ek bhag, one proportion, one portion. Bhagavan is who can see everybody's proportion, who has a 360-degree view. Such a being is Bhagavan. Can he be contained in Krishna? Not quite, because Krishna is incomplete without Ram. Can they be contained by both of them? Not quite. Vishnu is bigger. Can they be contained in Vishnu? Not quite. Everybody is not about household. Hermit is also important. Shivji becomes important. Jo Bairagi hai. Who is the hermit? Wait a minute. All are men. Where are the women? And then you will say, Shiva and Vishnu are incomplete without the goddess. Shiva's divinity comes from the goddess, without which he is Shava, without which he is a corpse. And what is Vishnu's role if there is no Draupadi or Sita? He has nothing to do. Time pass कैसे करेगा? और जब विष्णु सो रहे हैं, when Vishnu is busy sleeping in his yoga nidra, don't worry, the goddess can manage her on her own. She can take care of herself, but she likes being taken care of. And you'll say, well, everything is anthropomorphic. Don't worry, we have animals God also. Partially animal like Ganpati or fully animal like Garuda. Why animals? Why not plants? Well, plants also God, वो भी चलेगा. People का पेड़, बरगद का पेड़, आम का पेड़, सबकी पूजा करो. Tension क्या है? Then the rocks complain, then the river complains, then the mountains complain. So you worship rocks. Tension kya hai? Aliens may not understand it, but Indians do. Because you see, aliens are too busy judging. उनमें प्रेम नहीं है. जब तक तुम जज करते रहोगे, रासलीला नहीं कर पाओगे. Life is about looking at different people's points of view. It is tough. How can I look at the terrorists and say, your view is also valid? Tu bhi devata hai. Very tough when they have killed my lover. But remember, we also live in a society where the Supreme Court non-violently declares that a minuscule sexual minority is invalid. You don't exist. Mercifully for us, in the Mahabharata, Krishna says कि मेरे रथ के ऊपर सब हिजड़े खड़े हो सकते हैं. मुझे टेंशन नहीं है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट को टेंशन है. भगवान का दिल बड़ा है, and that is what takes India forward. Let us respect it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Lovely. It was a wonderful talk, Devdutt Pattanaik. As you see, it's covered a large area. So we have a few minutes to take some pointed questions, and this will also help us to open up to some other aspects of Devdutt's work and some of the wonderful stories that he's been telling. Shall I start with you? There should be a mic going around.
Mr. Pattanaik, you talked about the limited nature of philosophy, spirituality, religion, and all of that. All right, let us take religion in a very comprehensive manner. And yet, the way we conceive our gods and goddesses, it is very limited. Let me share a personal experience. Because you ended on the note of gender and Draupadi. I wrote a poem.
Sorry, we will not be able to take long questions.
No, it's not a long question. What I'm saying is the possibility of a relationship between Krishna and Draupadi. Why does it inspire ire and anger and abuse? You know,
okay, we got it. Thanks a lot. It's a good question. Please.
Well, The narrative, well, it depends on, I don't think it arouses the ire at all. Let me tell you a folk story. And, because there are so many Mahabharats out there, our knowledge is restricted to maybe one Mahabharat, which perhaps happens on television. But there is folk Mahabharats and so many Mahabharats, and really speaking, the narrative is very systematic. When Vishnu is Parshuram, the goddess takes the form of his mother. When Vishnu is Ram, the goddess takes form of Sita. When Vishnu becomes Krishna, she is related to him in no way. And therefore, the most powerful women in Krishna's life are Radha and Draupadi, who have no legal relationship or biological relationship with him, which means you are talking systematic gradation of relationship. One is the mother, the other is, which is a biological relationship. The second is a legal relationship. And the third is a relationship which is neither biological nor legal, which is neither natural nor cultural. So it is asking you to think in different ways, expanding the scope. That's why Purna Purusha. And that is why the concepts are far more complex. We reduce it to very simplistic arguments of this or that. It's far more complex and exciting for me.
Shall we move on to a question from somewhere at the back? Yes, please. I can see a hand up there near the aisle. Can someone get him a mic, please? And we keep it very pointed and short, please, so we can get in more questions.
Oh my God. I need to reach that.
You want to start from there? Maybe we can hear you.
Nahi sunai.
Nahi?
How you define the complexity of planets like the Vedic astrology, the Western astrology, the Zeus and all the Rahu and Ketus, you know?
हाँ, planets भी gods होते हैं.
सब
है ना?
तारे भी होते देवियां,
हाँ, तो
नक्षत्र.
ये planets god की बात कर रहे हैं.
See, look at the human imagination. We are continuously trying to define things. We all want to make sense of life. That was true today, it will be true 1,000 years from today. And they were trying to understand why do the stars move in different directions. And they are finding out different, just like astronomers today, can it predict something, can I say something? So everybody comes up and we suddenly realize there are rhythms and patterns in the universe. And rhythms and patterns I want to understand mathematically. The only one reason, because I want to predict my life and make it better. That is where it is coming from. So both science and astrology comes from the same place. Can I predict the future? Can I control the future? Can I make a life better? And therefore, although somebody in Jyotish Shastra will come and tell you that, in your fate it is written you are going to die tomorrow. What is the first question you'll say? Guruji, upay dikhaiye. Which in English is called innovation. Help me get out of it. Because we will never accept what is given to us. We always want to control our lives. So it comes from that space. So,
one of our speakers here, Sushma Singhvi ji, would like to ask a question.
If we practice taking care of others' points of view, can we win over possessiveness?
excellent question. You see, and that's the conversation. The conversation is, what is the bottom line? Property is a mythological concept. It is a subjective truth. Nature has no concept of property. If there were no human beings, there would be no property. Animals have territories, and the strongest animal always gets the territory. You can't pass it on to your children. So humans decided one day, this is my property. And how do you decide it? You decide this is my property on the basis of a powerful structure called the court. So there is a judicial system, there is a legislature which ensures this is my property. So we have to remind ourselves that when I'm taking care of the other person, it is not restricted to property. It is about the other person's insecurity. And because we are insecure, the way children need their little teddy bears, we need our money. And as long as I'm clinging to my teddy bear, and I will not give you my teddy bear, there will be conflict, which happens in every children's playground. We call it World War I.
Well, Sushma has just published a book on aparigraha. So it looks into that exact point that you're making, that the greatness is in not possessing anything. Going back to that story of the mendicant who was not wearing any clothes because he didn't see any wealth in showing his possession.
That. You see, while the idea of now, this is the hermit's way. The hermit will say, you should not possess anything. But Vyavaharik Jeevan, householder's way, is about property. Ramayana and Mahabharata are property disputes. Kaikeyi wants the property for her son. Pandavas and Kauravas are fighting over property. These are property disputes. They are not dismissing the reality of property. That property plays an important role in our life. I will say this is Devdutt Pattanaik's book. Question is how much the whole idea of intellectual property now. All these words are vyavaharik. They are for day-to-day transaction. Don't consider it praram satya. And the bottom line is when the tsunami hits, all property goes.
Now, let's move on to another question. Yes, please.
First of all, let me tell you, Mr. Pattanaik, I'm a great reader of your books and a big fan. I would like your comment on there has been a move recently of trying to present our mythology, parts of it as history, to interpret it. And the second related aspect is certain aspects of our myths, whether it was the Udan Khatola and the so-called nuclear weapons and things, to kind of present them as science. And there's a whole, I think, school of thought which is probably trying to rewrite history and science based on our myths. What is your view on that?
See, the root of the problem is objectivity. We have created a power structure. And the power structure is that if you have evidence and measurability and data, then you are superior to someone who doesn't value data, numbers, doesn't value it. We have created this power structure, upper and lower. So science is now the new Brahmin. And therefore, everybody wants to be scientific. And everybody says bhakti is scientific, yoga is scientific. And I'm like, why does it have to be scientific? Scientific is only about measurement. But this is this great pressure on everybody that you have to be scientific. So history is about the past and mythology is about timelessness. So we have to decide whether we want Ram in the past or we want Ram who is Sanatan, which is timeless, not bound to history and geography. Someone today decided that he is better in history. For me, he is timeless. वो तो सनातन है. मुझे history से कोई लेना देना है नहीं. It is the past, it's forgotten. छोड़ दो, आगे बढ़ो. But we seem to be obsessed with the past. And वो तो पितृपक्ष के लिए होता है ना. छोड़ दो उसको, आगे बढ़ो. वो नहीं बढ़ना चाहते हैं ना. We are stuck in the past. It's called baggage. We are not looking at the future.
Devdutt, I'm going to pull you a little more into this discussion. It's an important question. See, mythology and science, I mean, obviously these are not two separate arenas, but there is a public discourse going on right now which is trying to conflate the two, which is very difficult. However, where would you as a mythologist draw the line between myth, which is the power of the imagination, the power of metaphor, and a kind of contemporary truth claim within so-called the arena of science, which is saying हमारे यहाँ surgery भी थी, हमारे यहाँ ये उड़ान खटोला भी था, हमारे यहाँ missiles भी थे.
Okay. Let me explain.
Just a little
so
more
let's
on that.
understand what is science. Science is about measurement. You can measure matter. You can't measure the mind. So the pure sciences are physics, chemistry, and biology. Psychology, which is the study of the mind, is a pseudoscience. Psychology is a pseudoscience. Because the moment human imagination comes in, the rules of science are broken. So that is why politics and economics were once upon a time called social sciences. Now they are not. They are being called humanities. Because the moment human beings come, subjectivity comes in. The moment subjectivity comes in, science takes a back foot because science is all about objective. So an economist or a political theorist can give data, but ultimately his viewpoint is subjective. Therefore, you have right-wing historians and left-wing historians, right-wing economists and left-wing economists, because they're bringing their subjectivity into it. We are not understanding because subjectivity is not fiction. Because by that, all economy is fiction. By that, all politics is fiction. Because subjectivity it is all about subjectivity. I always tell people, तुमको science की समझ नहीं है. Science is about measurement. It says human imagination has stepped back. So psychology is pseudoscience. And every psychologist gets very upset. But globally, because science is about measurement, predictability, it is about predictability. Can you predict it? Is it observable? Is it evidence? Can you reproduce it in restricted conditions? There are very strict rules of science. It's a method of thinking. It is not interested in the truth. It is interested in data and fact. truth is a religious concept. Truth has nothing to do with science. Science is fact. I understand this, I can measure it, I can reproduce it. So that's the thing. So that's why history can be rewritten, because new data points come, the history keeps changing. More data comes, history will change. Economics will change because a new scholar will come with new set of data. Your knowledge is restricted to the data that you have access to. So Tom Piketty, when he writes on economy, he brings data and shows that capitalism is really always going to create power structures, and all the capitalists got upset. Because he said the data doesn't show it. Science is a method of thinking. Mythology said, chhod do imagination, respect imagination, because society is not based on science. Society is based on memory and mythology. All society is based on, it is not what your parents did, it is how you imagine your parents that will decide who you are as a person. Should I respect your imagination or violate it by saying that, no, 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 that is not the truth. Data shows your parents were jerks. I'm like, excuse me, my parents were wonderful people. No, 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 data shows your parents were jerks. And you think you'll be treated nicely in their house? Chai nahi milegi.
There's a question there, and we'll take one other question, two more. So just one question there, please, and one here. So if you can just get the mics to these two people. One there and one here. Start off. Yep.
Hello. So the whole story, you said that with Indians, everything's okay.
No, I didn't say that.
No.
You heard that.
सबको मानते हैं, हमें, we don't judge that.
आपका सवाल बताइए.
सवाल
Time
बताइए.
कम
So
है.
basically the story of Vrinda
Yeah.
and Tulsi. If we believe that everybody should be prayed,
Yeah.
then how ethically and morally correct is that?
Well,
What
ethics-
happened to her?
एक काम करते हैं, दूसरा सवाल भी ले लेते हैं.
I'll-
दूसरा सवाल भी पूछ लीजिए, और नहीं होगा वो सवाल भी पूछिए, फिर दोनों का जवाब एक साथ देंगे.
Yeah,
There was the person in the back. He was before you, if you don't mind.
just one. Yeah, you spoke about truth and transcendence. So I just wanted to know whether you believe that the power of myth will eventually lead us to some kind of understanding of transcendence, or whether scientific analysis, as on the lines of quantum physics, leads us to some kind of expansion of consciousness, or Brahman, as you put it. So is there something as singular truth, or it's just a mixture of subjectivity and objectivity?
Got it.
That's it.
One other question, and then you can do it together. The last question, please, and a very brief one, if you don't mind.
You refer to Wendy at Dinanath Batra. Let me disclose it to you that I belong to Dinanath Batra camp, as I have been his student. So, well, that is not my question. The question is, worshipping of animals or natural objects like mountains, rivers, don't you think they shouldn't be taken on its surface value, on a literal plane?
ठीक है.
Okay.
I think we've got it.
So there seems to be some sort of, you should apply your ecological mind to it.
Yeah.
So if we worship people, tree, then what's the harm in it?
Yeah.
Because it gives oxygen 24/7.
ठीक है. So
You
that's
see,
three
all
questions.
three questions have one thing in common. All three questions assume a should. You should think like this. Vrinda should be treated that way. We should go there. Who decides what I should do? If I want to worship mountains, let me worship mountains. What's your problem? The problem comes in relationships. Inner relationship.
Good.
मेरे को पत्थर की पूजा करनी है, तुम्हें टेंशन क्या है? तुम्हारा पैसा तो नहीं जा रहा? लेकिन रिलेशनशिप में प्रॉब्लम होता है. In a relationship, how do I treat you and how do you treat me? I may think, all parents say, but beta, for your own good, I don't want you to marry that man. The mother's truth is true, she's coming from love. You decide whether you want to be Ram and obey, or be Krishna and run. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very scintillating session. Thank you, Devdutt, for the enlightening view. And I think we're all together in wishing you the best in your work. And thank you for being such a wonderful and participative audience.
Thanks to Devdutt, Pattanaik, and Malashri Lal. That session was